Since we live, the Greek zao, zao. It's an omega, not an omicron. The O letter there. If we live, right? If we exist among the living, if we enjoy life, if we have vital power, that's what that Greek word zao means. If we look up Thayer's and Smith's Bible Dictionary, footnote number 161 in my commentary. If we live by the Spirit, like Paul says in this verse, let us also by His Spirit walk. And we talked about this in the liturgy. By the Spirit of Yeshua living inside of us, Paul emphasized that because we have been brought to life, right? There's a kind of a dual meaning in this word zao. If we live by the Spirit, not just have life by the Spirit, but have been brought to life by the Spirit, right? It goes both ways. If we live by the Spirit, then we also, like Paul says, and here's what we call the two sides of the coin of justification and sanctification being seen in one passage. We live by the Spirit. That's the I believe Paul is primarily talking about the justification part. We've been brought to life. We've been brought into existence by the power of the Spirit, right? He's the one that brought us to life. So that's the justification side of the coin. And then we flip that one coin over, and Paul now describes the sanctifying part. We also keep in step. There's that Greek phrase, that Greek verb stoikeo. We keep in step, right? A word that has military connotations or of proceeding or marching in a row. Footnote number 162 to the TSBD again on stoikeo. Because we live by the Spirit, the justification part, we also keep in step with the Spirit, the sanctification part. So it's one coin, two sides, and it's the important point to note is that it's both sides that are important, that are needed to describe the true existence of the coin. From God's perspective, the coin has both sides, and we in the church sometimes get tripped up on which is more important in God's view, justification or sanctification. The answer is both are vitally important in God's economy. The truth of the matter is, all right, listen up, those of you who've been raised in traditional Christian homes to believe that once you become a believer in Messiah, that you no longer have any obligation to keep the Torah. In other words, to look at that verse 18 again, but if you're led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. And your average sermon is going to explain this last clause, not under the law, as not under obligation to keep the law of Moses, aka the Torah. In other words, your average sermon is going to tell you that if you're led by the Spirit, meaning if you're a believer, right? If you're a Christian, you don't have to keep the Torah. You're not under the law. You don't have the obligation. So don't let anyone come along, any of these Torah teachers or Messianic rabbis or this Hebrew Roots movement or the Messianic Movement, all these people, don't let them come along and tell you that you need to be keeping kosher and that you should be keeping the Sabbath and that you should be keeping the festivals and that you should be wearing tzitzit and keeping a mezuzah on your door and don't let them tell you that you need to do all those Mosaic things, because all of that has been done away with because you're led by the Spirit. You're not under the law. In fact, they're going to go on to say that, and this is a phrase we're going to read later on in Galatians chapter 6. These same standard sermons are going to explain to you that you're not under the law of Messiah. You're not under the law of God. You're now under the law of Messiah. Right? Your obligation is to the law of Christ instead of the law of Moses, something like that. So listen up. It's to you that I'm explaining this last section in my notes here. The truth of the matter is that Torah observance exists from God's perspective as a matter of the heart. It's not something that should be external. From the beginning, God enjoined Israel to write the words of God on their hearts. We read about that in the Shema, right? Deuteronomy 6, verse 5. And these words that I'm commanding you today shall be upon where? Your heart. And you should teach them diligently to your children, right? Speak of them. That's verse 6, Deuteronomy 6, something around there. 4, 5, 6, working through the love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and then these words. Yeah, I think it's verse 6. So the truth of the matter is Torah observance has always been a matter of the heart. It's not a side thought that God said, gee, wouldn't it be novel if instead of asking them to keep the Torah on the outside, wouldn't it be novel? God kind of confers with himself. Wouldn't it be novel if I could get them to keep the Torah on the inside? No, it's always been that way. That's why we read it in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 36, verse 27. I'll put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, right? If the laws of God are on your heart, like we read about in Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through 34, then Torah observance is going to be the natural byproduct of having the Spirit of God write the words of God on your heart. All right, so let's read this in the final section of my notes here, top of page 173. Torah observance is a matter of the heart. It always has been, and it always shall be. Right? I say in my notes this way: genuine and lasting covenant membership, right? There's our status change. That's the new man that is brought to life as a result of our placing our faith in Messiah and having God's Spirit take up residency within us, right? That's the genuine and lasting covenant membership that's described by the Bible. That type of membership will always be characterized by genuine and lasting obedience.